The cold doesn't kill you when you feel cold. It kills you when you stop feeling anything at all. Picture this, it's winter, the sun is gone. The temperature is already in the 20s and falling fast. You're not tired yet, not injured, not panicking. And that's the most dangerous moment of all. Because what's about to kill you isn't the snow. It isn't the darkness, it isn't even the cold air. It's physics in winter survival. The biggest mistake preppers make isn't lack of gear. It's misunderstanding how heat actually leaves the human body. And once you understand that, everything changes. Here's the truth most people never hear. At 24 degrees Fahrenheit, the air itself isn't your biggest enemy. Wine doesn't just make you feel colder. It physically steals heat from your skin faster than your body can replace it. This is when chill landed as the silent multiplier that turns a survivable night into a death sentence. Your body runs on heat balance. Every second, you generate warmth through metabolism. Every second, the environment tries to take it away through conduction, radiation, evaporation, and convection. Wine supercharges convection. It strips away the thin layer of warm air hugging your skin and replaces it with colder air again and again like a conveyor belt of heat loss. That's why a calm 24-degree night might be survivable. But add a steady wind and suddenly your body is bleeding heat at a rate it cannot sustain. Now imagine you're stranded, no fire, no tent, no sleeping bag. Snow starts drifting sideways, clouds swallow the last light. Your sense of direction collapses. You stop moving, just for a moment, and that's when the cold sinks its teeth in. Your instinct screams for shelter. Anything overhead feels like salvation. Rock faces, cliffs, overhangs, but winter survival punishes instinct. Basalt cliffs look solid, ancient, protective, but physics has been working against them all season. Water seeps into cracks, freezes, expands. That expansion called frost heave turns stone into a loaded trap. One shift in temperature, one vibration, and hundreds of pounds of rock can drop without warning. So you move on. Your breath is heavy now, muscles stiffening, dexterity fading. This is the moment hypothermia stops being theoretical. Shivering intensifies, decision-making slows. Fine motor skills vanish, first buttons, zippers, knots become impossible, and yet survival is still possible. Not because of strength, not because of toughness, but because of understanding insulation. In this treeless, frozen landscape, there's a plant most people walk past without a second thought. Tall, hollow, flexible, tule reed, bulrush. To most, it's useless vegetation. To winter survival experts, it's a gift engineered by nature. Those hollow stalks trap air. Air is insulation. The same principle that keeps birds alive in winter. That keeps down jackets warm. That keeps mammals alive underground. But physics demands precision. Build in the wrong place, and the ground will betray you. Moisture rises. Condensation forms. Wet insulation becomes a heat sink instead of a barrier. In winter survival, dampness kills faster than cold air ever could. So you choose frozen ground or elevated terrain above the water table. You watch the reeds closely, where wind has already bent them into mats. Where snow load has forced them together naturally. Those shapes aren't random. They're stress-tested by the environment itself. And now comes the rule that separates survivors from statistics. Your shelter must be small, uncomfortably small. This is the sleeping bag principle. Every cubic inch of empty space is heat your body has to pay for. Too large, and you lose the war of calories versus convection. You don't build outward, you build inward. Weaving reeds by hand, over and under. Compressing structure, reinforcing curves. A tunnel just big enough to crawl into. A cocoon designed not for comfort but for thermal efficiency. Your fingers are slowing now, time is compressing, the wind is rising. And the most important layer, the one that decides whether you see morning, is still missing. Because structure alone doesn't stop physics, insulation does. And what happens next determines whether this shelter becomes a lifesaver or a frozen tomb. If you get this next step wrong, the shelter doesn't matter. Not the reeds, not the tunnel, not the hours you just burned while daylight died. Because at this temperature, exposure isn't the killer, heat loss is. And insulation is the only thing standing between you and physics doing what physics always does. Here's the mistake most people make. They think insulation works by blocking cold. It doesn't. Cold doesn't move. Heat does. Your body is a furnace bleeding energy into a hostile environment. Insulation's only job is to slow that bleed by trapping air motionless air. That's why snow shelters work. That's why animal dens work. That's why birds puff their feathers in winter. And that's why the next material you gather matters more than anything else you've done so far. You scan the area for fine, dry grass, not reeds, not thick stalks. You want fluffy, brittle, light, the kind of material that feels useless in summer. You grab armfuls, then more, then double what you think you need. Because insulation obeys one brutal rule: volume beats density. A thin layer does almost nothing. A massive layer creates thousands of tiny air pockets, each one slowing heat transfer just a little more. Stack enough of them together and convection starts losing. This is the down blanket effect. Feathers don't warm you. The air they trap does. You start with the exterior shell. Thicker reeds layered like shingles, overlapping downward so snow sheds instead of soaking in. Gravity works with you here if you let it. If you have a knife, even a small one, the work speeds up. Clean cuts, uniform bundles, tighter thatch. But even without tools, physics still plays fair. Snap, pull, weave, your shelter begins to disappear into the landscape. That's good. Camouflage reduces wind exposure. Smooth curves prevent turbulence. Sharp edges catch wind, curves let it flow. Now comes the moment most preppers never think about: the floor. Cold ground will drain heat from you faster than air ever could. Conduction is merciless. Lie directly on frozen earth and your core temperature collapses. So you build a mattress, thick grass, reeds, anything dry. You elevate yourself even a few inches and heat loss drops dramatically. This is why animals never sleep directly on snow. You crawl inside. It's tight, claustrophobic, barely room to turn your head. Perfect. Your body begins warming the trapped air almost immediately. Breath fogs the space, moisture rises, and now comes the final physics problem: condensation. Warm air holds moisture. Cold surfaces steal it. If that moisture freezes inside your insulation, it collapses the air pockets you worked so hard to create. So you leave a tiny vent, not a hole you can feel wind through. Just enough for moisture to escape. Too much ventilation and convection returns. Too little and dampness kills insulation from the inside out. Balance is survival. Minutes pass, shivering slows. Heart rate steadies, your body stops screaming. This is the point where most people make a fatal psychological error. They relax, but winter survival doesn't end when you're warm. It ends when morning comes. Wind chill is still outside. The temperature may still drop. Calories are burning faster than you realize. You stay still, movement creates sweat. Sweat is death in freezing conditions. Your shelter isn't keeping you warm. It's slowing how fast you freeze. That distinction matters. Every hour you survive is borrowed time paid for by insulation, shelter size, and physics working slightly in your favor. And here's the twist most preppers never accept. If you tried to tough it out without shelter, if you relied on clothing alone, if you underestimated wind chill by even a few degrees, your body would lose heat faster than metabolism could replace it. No amount of willpower changes that equation. That's why experienced winter survivors don't brag about endurance. They obsess over air gaps, moisture control, and shelter geometry. Because physics doesn't care how prepared you think you are, it only cares about heat transfer. And now you understand why most people freeze, not because they lacked supplies, but because they misunderstood the invisible forces stripping heat from their body. Second by second, the cold didn't win, physics did.